Even though the Romans struggled with the Parthians for over 200 years, they never wholly defeated them. Almost everyone has heard of the Roman Empire. Its army was nearly unstoppable, and it built a world power that still influences our lives today. However, the Romans were not undefeated. One of the empires that stood up to the Romans and lived to tell the tale was the Parthian Empire. They were the successors of the Persian Empire and carried over many Persian cultural traditions, including multiculturalism. They had a prosperous and thriving society, and their warriors were strong enough to stand up to the Roman legions and even be victorious. They proved themselves to be one of Rome's greatest enemies. Where did the Parthian Empire come from? The Parthians started as part of the Persian Empire. The province Parthia was located in modern northeastern Iran. The people there were relatively peaceful, but the nomadic Scythian tribes who lived north of them were not. One of these tribes was the Parni, but historians don't know much about this tribe because there are few written records about them. The Parni do not appear to have kept a written history, and when they are mentioned in other written texts, they are usually on the attack. Parthia became a major power around 247 BCE. Alexander the Great had already come, conquered, and died by this time, and his generals had split his empire among themselves. The Seleucid Empire took over Parthia, but it soon became chaotic due to a war with Egypt. In 247 BCE, Androgoras, the Parthian satrap, used the chaos to announce his independence. However, that made him a prime target for the Parni, who attacked. They were led by Arsaces, who conquered Parthia around 238 BCE. However, the Parthian Empire did not end. No, the Parni quickly abandoned their nomadic lifestyle and adopted a settled monarchy. They even took over the Parthian culture and eventually even called themselves Parthians. They kept little from their nomadic culture except horseback riding and archery. However, the Parni were not allowed to take over Parthia without outside testing, which came first from the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucid Empire was not going to give up Parthia without a fight, so only a couple of years after Arsaces took the throne, the Seleucid Empire attacked. However, the battle was short because Asia Minor rebelled, and the empire had to turn its attention to face that. With so much deterioration, the Seleucid Empire could not focus on this new threat. They turned the Parthians into a vassal state in 209 BCE, which was not a significant setback though, because the Seleucids were once again more concerned with other wars. In the meantime, the Parthians gained protection from the Seleucid army as they grew stronger. The Parthians stayed under the Seleucid Empire until Phraates I came to the throne. By this time, the Seleucid Empire was in decline and spending all its available resources on indemnities to Rome. Phraates I began his conquest by taking over the Amardians, who were poor highlanders who did not receive any support from the Seleucids. Encouraged, Phraates I continued Parthian expansion, but he died soon into it in 171 BCE. Some stories say that on his deathbed, Phraates I chose his brother as his successor. It was highly unusual to choose a sibling over one's sons, and historians aren't sure why Phraates I made this choice. However, Mithridates I continued the expansion plans and established Parthia as an international power. Instead of continuing south, Mithridates I expanded west. Sometime between 163 and 155 BCE, he conquered Margiana and Aria, which were important to the Silk Road, a trade route connecting China to the Mediterranean civilizations, providing a lot of wealth. Now that it was under Parthian power, it helped to fund Parthian expansion to the south. Mithridates I waited until 149 BCE to continue conquering south of Parthia, because that land belonged to the Seleucid Empire. Even though they were in decline, they were still a powerful adversary, but Mithridates I utilized the Seleucid civil war as a cover for his work. He quickly conquered the province of Media in 147 and Babylonia in 141 BCE. His generals continued to expand the new Parthian Empire, which quickly showed its military supremacy. By the time Mithridates I died around 137 BCE, the Parthian Empire stretched from Mesopotamia to the Indus River. It also covered the land between the Persian Gulf and the Caspian Sea. In just a few short years, the Parthian Empire had become one of the most powerful in the world. Of course, they could not hold that power without a fight. The Seleucids came back for their land, which resulted in significant battles, and the Parthians also had to deal with threats from China as nomadic tribes pushed through the area. Under Mithridates II, the Parthians finally established peaceful relations with the Chinese around 120 BCE. But the Romans did not have such luck. Instead, relations with the Romans were filled with tensions from the beginning. But nothing came of it after Mithridates II died in 91 BCE. The Parthian Empire fell into a time of chaos and decay after Mithridates II's death, and by 70 BCE, the empire had lost much of its wealth and power. How did the Parthian Empire become Rome's greatest enemy? You might think the Parthian Empire would no longer be a threat after their losses in 70 BCE, but they were still a formidable adversary and strong enough to oppose the Romans. Hostilities began with the Roman war over the Armenian kingdom. The Parthians were interested in taking Armenia for themselves, but the Romans established their claim to the area. While historians think that Phraates III was not concerned about losing Armenia, he was unwilling to allow the Romans to take territory in northern Mesopotamia. He marched his troops to the northern part of the Tigris River, but the Romans quickly drove them away, officially starting the animosity between the two empires. In 55 BCE, Crassus, a member of the first triumvirate with Julius Caesar, decided to march about 40,000 troops into Parthia. He didn't know it then, but the decision to attack Parthia would change Roman history forever. Crassus's forces finally met the Parthian troops at the Battle of Carrhae. Through several pieces of misinformation and a few bad decisions, the Romans had to battle in open terrain. The Romans were primarily heavy infantry, but the Parthians were mainly cavalry. The Parthians had much more mobility and range than the Romans, and the Romans quickly attempted to flee. However, the Parthians gave chase, killing and capturing even more Roman soldiers. Historians estimate that about 20,000 Roman soldiers died in this battle, including Crassus, and another 10,000 were captured, along with Roman standards. The standards were critical to the Roman military, and losing them was shameful. But the most embarrassing part was that the Parthians lost few soldiers. The Battle of Carrhae was a complete disaster for the Romans. It led to other rebellions throughout the empire and the eventual fall of the first triumvirate. The Parthians did not participate much in the civil war between Pompey and Caesar, but after Caesar's assassination, Parthia attempted to reconquer their lost lands. Unfortunately, their work in Asia Minor was cut short by the end of the Roman Civil War. The Romans reconquered the land, which began a series of skirmishes that lasted about 100 years. The two empires fought over the right to rule Armenia, and the Parthians repeatedly proved their mettle against the Roman legions. Their cavalry archers helped give them the element of surprise, which led the Parthians to victory in several battles. Of course, the Romans were not above using Parthian unrest for their purposes, and they supported a few puppet kings on the Parthian throne. This interference made the people angry, further instigating unrest in the empire. This tension continued until Vologases I took the Parthian throne around 51 CE. By this time, the kingdom had been in chaos for several years as kings and pretenders battled for power. Vologases I was loosely related to the original Parthian dynasty, but he continued the Parthian fight for Armenia. In 58 CE, the Romans marched to take Armenia back, but again found themselves fighting their great military enemy. The Romans were stretched thin against this formidable adversary. Vologases I tried negotiating peace several times with the Romans, but they refused to consider it until 63 CE. The Roman commander Corbulo knew he could not guarantee victory against the Parthians. So when the king of Armenia, Tiridates, agreed to submit to Rome as long as he was still allowed to rule his province, Corbulo accepted. On paper, Armenia belonged to the Roman Empire, but in practicality, Armenia was still controlled by the Parthian Empire, mainly because Tiridates was Vologases I's brother. After this war, both empires settled into one of the longer peacetimes between the two. Neither was willing to test the other's military strength again. The Romans were strong, but the Parthians had already proved themselves more than equal to the great Roman legion. How did the Parthian Empire end? Although the Parthians spent much of their later years fighting the Roman Empire, they did not fall to the Romans. Instead, the Parthian Empire was finally defeated by the king of Persis, southwestern Iran. However, the Parthians' continued battles with the Romans and resulting instability certainly exacerbated the problem. Tensions resumed under Emperor Trajan, who invaded Armenia and Mesopotamia in 114 and 115 respectively. Trajan did not get far before his death, but the empires battled over control of the province. Although the Parthians continued to fight their old enemy, it was soon evident that the empire had lost much of its military vitality. The Romans continued to invade and wrest land away. The nobility became more independent, and the Parthian Empire began to crumble slowly. Still, just because the empire had lost some of its power did not mean that the Parthians had entirely forgotten their prowess. The final war between the two armies was bloody and ended with a Parthian victory in 217 CE. The Romans even agreed to pay retribution. However, this final war weakened the Parthian Empire, and it allowed time for Ardashir I to rebel against the Parthians. He was a client king for the Persian province and used the war between the Parthians and Romans to take territory for himself. The Parthians turned their attention to Ardashir I after defeating the Romans, but Ardashir I won all three battles against the Parthians. In 224 CE, the Parthian king died at the Battle of Hormozgan, and Ardashir I took the throne and established the Sassanid Empire. The Sassanid Empire adopted many of the cultures and traditions of the Parthian Empire, including being Rome's enemy. They even carried their animosity into the Byzantine era. Embracing Parthian ideals allowed pieces of the old Persian Empire to live on. Historians called the Sassanid Empire a Neo-Persian Empire as a result. The Parthian Empire was one of the great empires of the ancient world. They were far more than just soldiers. The Parthians embraced trade and art, supporting a multicultural empire and leaving a lasting impact that is still impacting the Middle East today. Yet, included in all their outstanding achievements are their victories against the Roman Empire. The Parthians were one of the greatest enemies Rome ever had to fight, and they were one of the few people the Romans could not conquer. They had a great spirit that fueled their empire and survived through the Sassanid Empire. It is still part of us today, which is why the Parthian Empire deserves recognition as an influential people who changed world history in their struggles with the Roman Empire. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the Parthian Empire, check out our book, Parthian Empire, a captivating guide to the enemy of the Roman Republic and Roman Empire. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.